How does one describe Artemis Fowl? Various psychiatrists have tried and failed.
The main problem is Artemis's own intelligence. He bamboozles every test that's thrown at him.
He's puzzled the greatest medical minds and sent many of them gibbering to their own hospitals.
There's no doubt that Artemis is a child prodigy, but why does someone of such brilliance dedicate himself to criminal activities?
This is a question that can be answered by only one person, and he delights in not talking.
Perhaps the best way to create an accurate picture of Artemis is to tell the by now famous account of his villainous first adventure.
I have put together this report from first-hand interviews with the victims, and as the tale unfolds, you will realise that this was not easy.
The story began 20 years ago, at the dawn of the 21st century.
Artemis Fowl had devised a plan to restore his family's fortune.
A plan that could topple civilizations and plunge the planet into a cross-species war.
Sounds good.
Ladies, gentlemen, mudfolk, fairies, welcome to our very special live event for the 20th anniversary of Artemis Fowl. We've got a lot to pack into the next hour, lots of discussions, clips, Q&A. But without further ado, a round of applause, please, to the man himself, Eoin Colfer.
Hello. Owen, that was a great intro. All those nice people being very nice about Artemis. So yeah, and thanks for doing this, Matt. Who else would do it? Who else could it be except?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got our very, very good friend Seamus helping in the background, pulling the strings like the master of puppets he is. But yeah, all good. So, Owen, 20 long years.
I know it's been in some ways it seems like a different lifetime, and then in other ways it seems to have flown past. And I remember writing that book in a little box bedroom in a small town in Southern Ireland. It was the baby's room actually. When Finn, now as you know Finn, man, and Finn is way taller than me, and he's in London in college, but then he was a baby, so it just seems like a different life, and we've come so far. And I never really thought one would read the book, so it's unbelievable that people are still reading it.
What so it's obviously the anniversary of the anniversary, so the eve of the anniversary today. What were you doing 20 years ago today?
Well, I was a primary teacher, and we got the news that it was going to be published in September, and so I knew that I would work up to Christmas, and then in January we would start gearing up, and then when the date came, April, I was going on tour. So Jackie, who's sitting here beside me, we went to UK first a tour, and we went directly to America, and then we went directly to Australia. So it was a nuts few months, and for someone who'd never done a tour, it was really jumping in at the deep end. So I remember being really nervous, and I was taking Rescue Remedy, and every time I went on stage, it was kind of it was wild, because I went from being completely not, and then that book just took off straight away. So one day no one had ever, well, and the next day it was on the New York Times and on the UK bestsellers list. So it was a strange, real time, and I'm really kind of only looking back and enjoying it now. At the time, it was all very scary, but fun. But a lot of fun, but very unexpected.
I can imagine. It's from what I remember as well. I remember you saying in the past that the first Artemis Fowl book took you quite a while to write. How long did you actually spend writing that book before kind of going, it's ready, let's publish this?
Because there's such a mythology to it, and such a world building to it. It took me longer than my previous 3 or 4 books that were all quite self-contained. But this was something that could be expanded upon, and so there were levels to it. I'd say it took about 2.5 years, and it was originally about twice as long. So sometime, I don't know where that original draft is, but it's around somewhere. That could be my director's cut. Although in this particular instance, the director's cut is probably not the best one. So, but it took a long time, and a lot of drafts and a lot of character sketches. Even though it's a fast-paced adventure book, you still need to make it work and be real inside its own world. So, but it was great fun, and I really enjoyed writing it, and I still enjoy writing in that world.
Well, we've got a nice little a clip actually from Sophie Hicks, your literary agent. So I think we're gonna roll that clip right now, I believe.
Hello, I'm Sophie Hicks. I'm Eoin Colfer's literary agent, and I cannot believe that it has been 20 years since the world was first introduced to Artemis Fowl. And for the 20th anniversary, I wanted to share a couple of early memories that I have from 2000 and from 2001. Receiving a manuscript for an agent is always a thrill and a delight when you read something that special and that exciting. And of course, back then, when manuscripts were sent and arrived at your office, they didn't come by email. They literally came bundled up in rubber bands, printed off, posted in jiffy bags. And that's how I first received Artemis Fowl as a manuscript. The thrill, the excitement is something I'll never forget. It felt special. It felt original and fresh and funny. Every agent's dream, basically. And then after that, not long after that, I went to Dublin and I met Eoin, and to meet the man behind the work was also a big thrill. I, of course, fell in love with Eoin like I'd fallen in love with his character, Artemis, and I signed him. Another early memory was later, in 2001, a year later, when the book was about to be published. We'd had an auction with Puffin, and the publisher had sent us, both Eoin and myself, to Clay's, the printers, to actually watch and witness that first print run come off the presses. And that was a thrill. I'd never done that myself either in my career. So we both turned up, all excited, and watched the printing presses turn and the books follow on this sort of train around this huge warehouse. And finally, we saw that first book coming along, and it stopped in front of Eoin, and he picked it up, and he tapped his head with it, and he said, "My first hardback." So that is a brilliant memory for me, one of the best and highlights of my career, definitely. It's been a joy and a privilege to work with Eoin all these years. And I'm looking forward to the many years ahead and the many books, of course, that he's written beyond Artemis, that he has written and that he will write in the future. I'm looking forward to those years. Happy anniversary, Artemis. And Eoin, happy anniversary, pal.
She's so fantastic. I mean, I've been completely blessed. I mean, behind every, I suppose, good author, there's a good agent. But in this case, it's beside. We're right beside. She's a full partner, and she's just been brilliant. And I couldn't ask for a better agent, and I never will.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to meet Sophie a couple of years back as well. I think just before an event, and she really is just a lovely person, isn't she?
Yeah, she's great. But she's great, and she's a person and a great agent, and I think that's the difference for me.
That's what you need. So, Artemis then went on to become a blinding success. When the first book came out and you saw it kind of scaling charts and selling tons and tons of copies, did you expect to be writing a sequel, let alone 7 more books after that first one?
No, the first one was very much for me a standalone book. And I thought it would be maybe a niche comedy action thing, because you have to remember it's about an anti-hero or a good bad guy, and I didn't know how that would go down. He certainly wasn't the normal kind of hero. So I thought, this is going to be my fourth novel for young people. It's probably going to do well in Ireland, and maybe for some reason I'd been doing really well in Germany, so I thought, well, it'll probably do well there. But I had just no idea what was going to happen. And it was actually Jackie who said to me, Jackie used to read all the books in advance and before they went in, and she said, right, you have to get an agent now. So she saw something in that had, possibly international appeal, even though it's said all in Ireland. So I didn't know, but and so I rang up Sophie's office, and we took it from there. But even then, it's a real Irish thing not to want to celebrate too much too early, or to think you're going to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And the moment for me that, and I often tell the story, that I realized there was something happening was when the book was coming out. I was going to London, and this was not for the actual tour. It was maybe it was to go over and see it printed with Sophie that time. And I was in Dublin Airport, and I just saw the Guardian, and on the banner over the title there were usually three photos of three people, and in the three photos there was David Beckham, I think it was Bruce Springsteen, and in the middle was me, and I went, "What? Am I being arrested? What's going on here?" But it's a moment like that when you think, "This, is there some kind of build happening here?" And you could kind of feel the excitement building. And then when I arrived in London, and it was on the side of buses, then you really did feel. But I'm a kind of a pessimist, and I still feel it's not going to be a success, even though it paid the years. So there's a message from Stephanie Lurie, my editor in hello, Steph. Hi, Steph. I'll see you soon. I'm working on something, I promise. Steph's great. Steph is my second editor in Disney after Alessandra Balzer, and Steph's and I have been working together for well over a decade, and she's fantastic.
Wonderful. I mean, just talking about not being a success, I was digging through my my sort of collection of items the other day, and I don't know if you remember, they did these box sets after you did the.
Yeah.
But it came with.
Oh, yes, I remember that at the time. That was unbelievably amazing, and now
I know. It's sort of, it says up at the top there. It's
6 million copies. I mean, it's still unbelievable to me that the first 3 or 4 books sold 6 million copies. You don't really think about it. I don't think about numbers. I really think about the book, and does it stand up, and what do people that I trust think about it. And I have friends who will tell me what they think, and kids, of course, are very honest, so they like it. I think the biggest challenge for me was to finish it properly, because after 8 books, you just don't want to leave it in a way that's either boring or doesn't wrap up all the threads. So it took quite a long time to finish it quickly, but also in a satisfying way. So hopefully that worked. I haven't had too many complaints, but I'm sure we'll get a few.
Sure. You mentioned friends. Obviously, you how did your friends react? Like, your friends and family around Wexford, your hometown. How did they react when they kind of realised that you were heading to stardom, so to speak?
The Wexford wit is kind of, it's very sarcasm heavy. So they wouldn't, the more they teased you, the more you knew, oh, I must be doing okay. I'm getting a lot of teasing here tonight, so it must be going well. But there was a sense, I suppose, of disbelief, because I'd been working there all my life. I was in my mid-30s. I was a local school teacher. I'd been plugging away at the writing. I'd written local plays that had gone on, and people were vaguely aware I did a bit of writing. And then suddenly, it seemed like to most people that overnight I was on the front page of newspapers, and I was on the local news and international news, and next thing I was on the BBC breakfast news. And some of the people watching this will remember the Big Breakfast. You're too young for that, Matt.
I vaguely recall.
I think it was, his name was Johnny Vaughan, doing that, and Denise Van Etten actually interviewed me. And so for a guy to go from Wexford to the Big Breakfast, it just seemed like it couldn't actually be happening. So it was a very heady time, I suppose. But I was just going from interview to interview, and I was never sitting back and saying, "Wow, I'm such a great success now." It was just get in the car, go to the next radio station, go to the next library, get home. You've got to get the book written. The number 2 has to be in by October or whatever. And so for a long time, I mean, in the last 20 years, I've written 50 books. So it's been mostly work, and I'm not complaining about that because I love my work. But the nice thing is that we can go off as a family together, and I can still work because I have my little laptop under my arm, and I don't really go anywhere without it. So no, it's been a great career. I mean, I've been so fortunate, and I've lived all over the world, and I've met wonderful people, and even all those people who did the video at the beginning, they're people I've met on my travels. So that's been great, and all the people who worked in the publishers who brought me around, and my collaborators, people like Andrew and Gio, who I'm leaning the wrong way, who did the graphic novels. You can see one there behind me. It's just been a joy to work with these people. So, good man, you've got yours in plastic. And to continue to work with Andrew. I think I definitely don't. But Andrew and Gio and I are doing another graphic novel next year. So I've forged these collaborations that just endure, and that's one of the. And yourself and Seamus, obviously, we have kind of a working relationship now that's been going on for quite a while. So I've been really lucky and continue to be lucky.
Talking about that, we've actually got another clip from a friend of yours from Wexford, George Lawler. So let's roll it.
Hi, Eoin. It's hard to believe it's 20 years since the wonderful Artemis Fowl came into being. And what a time you've had since then. One of my abiding memories of our time together, particularly on stage, was South Pacific all those years ago, which was such fun. When you played the radio operator, and one of your famous lines in it was, "Look at that shite!" And then, as you were performing as the radio operator, one of the guys put black boot polish on the radio thing, so when you spoke into the radio and then took it away, you had a big black ring around. And then in Lords of Love, when you were so nervous you used to stand at the side of the stage every night as myself and Tony delivered your and Liam's and Cyril's Lords of Love, a great production. You were so nervous, and then one night Tony forgot his lines, and you were so petrified that you ran up the side of the stage out towards the dressing rooms just to get away from it. There were great times. Congratulations on a wonderful career, and congratulations on 20 years of Artemis. Well done.
George is one of my oldest friends, and he's a fantastic singer and actor, and Mayor of Wexford, the ex-mayor. So he was in a show of mine, and the two guys forgot and I was so distraught that they forgot their lines. I just decided I was leaving the theatre. But as I was leaving, they had speakers backstage, and I got to the third speaker and I heard them remembering the line, so I came back. But,
that's a great story. So, you keep yourself very busy between Artemis books. So, over the years, as you've written more and more Artemis, you've always kind of had new projects in the works. And how did you balance writing the Fowl stories with other projects?
That was very deliberately done because I get bored easily. So I thought to myself, the only way to keep this fresh is to alternate. So I did the first 2 Artemis Fowl books together. And then from then on, I switched up a novel in between. And I'm sure it would have been a better idea for the series and career-wise to keep doing Artemis Fowl one after the other, but I just couldn't do that. It's just not how my brain works. And I actually really like going off and doing a collaboration on a picture book with people, like Tony Ross, or as I said, Andrew and Gio, or Oliver Jeffers, or PJ Lynch, or all the other wonderful people. I'll do musicals with Liam Bates from Wexford, or plays with Don Richarley. So I just had a lot of stuff going, and that's not even including all the short stories I did for fantasy books. And then I was the laureate for 2 years. So yeah, I really I like to keep busy. I'm very happy when I'm busy and when I have stuff on. And my main problem is I take on too much stuff. So I'm trying to cut back a bit, and maybe, but at the moment I'm working on 5 projects, and they're all coming out over the next 2 years. So I think I haven't really succeeded on the cutting back part of my of my career. It's still going strong, but I'm gonna really miss the fowl world, the Fowlverse or Fowliverse when I wrap up the Twins next year. So I think I have one kind of, I told you about it, but it's kind of a secret project that I'm working on, and hopefully we can announce that next year. And that is really, really, really exciting, because it puts all my loves in the literature together. So that should be really fun. But I'm going to miss it. I'll miss Miles. I'll miss everything associated with it. I've really grown to love that whole fantasy world. So it'll be tough to let it go completely.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned obviously your sort of collaboration with Andrew Donkin and Giovanni Regano, who you worked on the Artemis Fowl graphic novels with, and you've done Illegal with, and I think you've got a new one coming out at some point called Global.
Yeah, I'm trying to find mine.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, there he is. I can see Illegal.
There we go. There we go. It's there.
Well, we're doing Global. Yeah. And we've actually got another clip from Andrew this time, who's got some kind words to say.
Oh, kind? I hope so.
Hello, buddy. 20 years of Artemis Fowl. Amazing. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to the criminal mastermind himself. I remember when you first told me about the idea for the book of Artemis Fowl. I think it was at your 60th birthday party. So I remember sitting a little bit too close to the cake with the candles and going home with a tan. But it was a fantastic idea. It's lasted over 2 decades. I do remember meeting you at Sophie's place, and we were the only 2 people in the room who loved comics, who'd grown up reading comics, and eventually that led us to doing all the Artemis Fowl graphic novels. Thank you for sharing the world of Artemis with us. It's led to all sorts of fantastic adventures for you and I and all the other people in the world of Artemis. It's led to Illegal, which is amazing, and it's led to me being allowed to play with all your toys, which you always so very kindly lend people to play with in A Guide to the Fairies. Many congratulations to you. Not many kids' books last that long. It's got so many legs. Look forward to the adventures of the Artemis Twins in the end of the year, and just big congratulations and big love, mate. Well done.
Oh, Andrew's great. That's exactly how our relationship is. It's a lot of affection, but also a lot of teasing. But Andrew is kind of multi-talented, and we really complement each other work-wise, because we both get the same kind of humor. So it's really a joy to work with Andrew. He's a very talented guy.
Yeah. So it's 2012. The last Artemis Fowl book, The Last Guardian, has released. It's going to be then, a good number of years before there's really any kind of new fowl stuff. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, seemingly, the movie announcement comes. What was it like, after so long hearing that it would finally actually be made?
Well, I didn't really believe it, because I had heard so many times. I mean, and you probably know as well, I told you that before every announcement would come, I would get a call a couple of weeks beforehand, and they would tell me, oh, so-and-so's going to direct it, and it's all set, it's ready to go. And then I would tell you, and then nothing would happen. So I just presumed this was probably going to be another one of those times. And but then I got another call to see when I would be in London and would I meet up with Kenneth Branagh. So I went to his offices, and he was lovely, and his producer was lovely. And even then, I just kind of thought, well, that's nice. I've been here before. This was the third meeting I'd had in London with a director. So I was still thinking, this great. If he did it, that would be fantastic. But it's probably not going to happen. So I was getting a bit jaded. And even when they started casting, I still was thinking, well, I've been in castings before, and so I wasn't allowing to get excited. So I think it wasn't really until I visited the set myself and saw them filming that it really hit home. Oh, it really looks like this is going to go ahead now. And then even when it got made, the pandemic came, so it couldn't be released in theaters. And
just our luck.
It was just kind of one thing after another. But that's such a small thing in the grand scheme of how the world was at that time. For me to be worried about a movie, if it was going to be on this screen or that screen, it seems a little disingenuous. So, but having said that, I did worry about it. Like, I'm only human. I did get a bit. I really wanted to have that premiere because I was going to go with Jackie and the boys, and it would have been very special. But I mean, something else will happen. I've got stuff in the pipeline, so we'll get there yet. But yeah, it was still surreal. It's still surreal. I mean, we have Disney Plus here, and it's still surreal when you turn it on, and it's there on the menu. So I mean, I don't watch it every day. I'm not that, but it is nice to turn on if I'm watching, one of the Marvel shows, and I turn it on, and down the bottom, and it's
watch next.
Still there. It's watch next, right? Yeah, recommended for you, or whatever. But so I do get a little buzz out of it.
Talking about the casting, we've actually got a lovely message from Lara McDonald to show you, who played Holly Short in the movie. Roll that clip.
From the very first moment I picked up Artemis Fowl, Holly Short was my favourite character, without question. Not only is she incredibly quick-witted and sarcastic and able to stand her ground, but she's a genuine hero. She's so incredibly selfless to the point where no matter the consequences for her or no matter what anybody says, she always does what is right. And reading that growing up was such an inspiration, not just to me, but I feel to everyone who grew up and is still reading Artemis Fowl. And I am so incredibly grateful to Eoin Colfer, to Eoin. Thank you so much for creating this character. Growing up with Holly Short inspired me to do what is right and to do what I think is right no matter what anybody else is saying. And the fact that I got to play Holly has changed my life forever. Thank you so much for creating Artemis Fowl. It has changed not just my life, but so many others of every single person who has read it. And I will never be able to thank you enough for that. Thank you so much. Happy 20 years.
Lara's great. I think she's a real star, and I think she's going to really light up the movie world when we get out of this pandemic. And Ferdy is great too. So I couldn't have been. They couldn't have been a better cast, really. So hopefully they will. Hopefully I'll see them again, and hopefully they'll go on to do even better things, even greater things. I'm sure they will.
Absolutely. So now we are nearly 20 years on. We're currently waiting for the third book in the Fowl Twins series. How was it returning to writing Fowl after such a long hiatus of writing about the world and the characters?
Well, I think I had been working on Artemis off and on for 15 years, and I felt it was time to stretch my muscles a bit and do other stuff. But I said in all the interviews, or a lot of the interviews at the time, that I was going to stay away for 5 years from the Fowl world, and then I would do spin-off. And I had thought maybe I would do Mulch. It was either Mulch, Holly, or the Twins. And eventually I thought I would settle on the Twins because they were very much unmined, as in I hadn't really used them that much. So it could be a book for a new generation as such. I felt the characters of Mulch and Holly kind of belonged to the Artemis generation, whereas the twins could be for their kids now. So so that's why I chose them. And I was a little apprehensive going back, but then once I got into the swing, it was really great, and I'm really enjoying it. I wouldn't do a big long series again because there's so much I want to do. But I think these are much punchier books. They're much funnier. They're much lighter. There's like vast tracks of scatological jokes, which I really enjoy. The childish side of me. Yeah, so I loved it. I was hesitant, and it took me a few there's a couple of false starts where I felt I started it and then I didn't get the tone I wanted, so I'd go back again and start again. But once I kind of clicked into that groove, it really flowed nicely, and I really, really love doing it. So it's been great that there's been such a positive response. And I love going to readings when back in the day when we used to go to readings, with sometimes 2 or maybe 3 generations of the same family would turn up, and the dad or the mom is reading Artemis, and then the kids are reading the Fowl Twins. So that's been really nice.
Madness. It's yeah. Well, what can we expect for all the Fowl Twins fans out there? What can we expect in the upcoming Fowl Twins Get What They Deserve?
Well, in the Fowl Twins Get What They Deserve, I set myself a real challenge of tying up a lot of all the loose ends that are brought up by the first 2 books. But also, there's a couple of things in Artemis that I felt I didn't really do justice to. And one of those is Minerva Paradiso. Now, she was kind of Artemis's semi-love interest for about a third of a book in The Lost Colony. And people really liked that character. She was supposed to be kind of a female version of Artemis in that she was really smart and really driven, and she really wanted to beat Artemis, and he really wanted to beat her, and that was kind of the attraction. But once that adventure was over, I just kind of, I never followed up on her. And people ask me so much in meetings, whatever happened to Minerva? I really like Minerva, and you just dropped her. So there's, I think, a very nice cameo for Minerva in this book, where I think her story is wrapped up really nicely. And it's not just a wrap up. I'm not just saying, oh, here's a character and this is what happened. She serves a real purpose in the story that only she could serve. So I think people will be surprised how her story turned out. And I did a few little things like that. There's one very special one right at the end that I can't tell you without giving away. But the main thing, I suppose, is one of my favorite villains in the 50 books I've written is Lord Teddy. Lord Teddy bleed him dry. So he finds a very clever way to come back in the 3rd book. And he's kind of like their Joker, if you like. So he's the arch enemy, and they have the final showdown, and he's determined that the twins will get what they deserve, which of course he believes is painful and prolonged death. So we'll see if that does happen. So there's clones, robots. There's, I think, the London Eye is featured at one point. We go over to, we end up back in, I think, over New Orleans. I had done a lot of research on New Orleans for High Fire, so I decided I would revisit that city, and then we go back to the City Isles, the island of St. George, where Lord Teddy is the Duke. So it's a very interesting, very arch, very nudge, wink, wink meta book. So I think people will really, and I try to make it the funniest book. I think it's for jokes per page, I think it is completely packed, and hopefully my goal is to make people laugh on trains, because I think that is the most embarrassing place to laugh. So if I can get people to laugh out loud on trains, please let me know, because that gives me a great satisfaction.
Where did the inspiration? I mean, we've kind of heard over the years about the character inspiration for the Fowl Twins, but do you want to tell us a little bit about where the Fowl Twins really came from?
Well, they really came from my own sons, Finn and Sean, who are not twins, but they're quite opposite. Finn is a real force of nature, and Sean is very, very smart, very sharp, very organized, and both are very effective with their own particular method. And I'll give you an example of this. How we went to France for a year, and both the boys went to school, and they both had to deal with it in their own way. And I remember bringing Finn into school, and I said, "Now, Finn, you're going to have to speak French." And he said, "No," I said, I'm going to make everyone speak English." And I said, "Finn, that's not how the world works. That's not going to happen." But I was called in about 3 months later, and the teacher said, "Everyone's speaking English." I can't get, destroying the school. So that was very effective for him, and it just force of will he did it. And with Sean, it was the same thing. I said, "Now, Sean, you'll have to speak French," and he said, "No, I'm just not going to speak." And so what he did was he picked 3 words. I think it was oui, no, and peut-être, and that's all he said. And the teacher thought he was great at French and didn't realize that he wasn't, that he was just speaking 3 words because he used them with such brio. And that's an example to me of how you can get your way in a totally different manner. And that's how Miles and Beckett do it. Miles always takes the cerebral route, and then Beckett will do cartwheels to where he wants to go. So, but both get there in the end, and they complement each other perfectly. So obviously, they're not serious character studies of my sons, but they do have them at the kernel somewhere.
So talking about Finn and Sean, we do actually have clips. So I think we'll show the clip from Sean first, if that's all right.
Got a clip of Sean.
Yep.
Hi everyone. I'm Sean, one of Owen's sons, and I'm gonna answer the question given to me by Seamus about what's it been like growing up with Artemis Fowl in my life. Me and my family are so lucky to have grown up with these books, especially me and Finn, that Eoin wrote. Artemis Fowl is the reason why we've been able to travel to so many places, meet new people, see different cultures, and especially meet the fans of the books. Like everywhere you go, there's a fan of Artemis Fowl, and that's honestly mind-blowing. How strong the fan base is and how supportive they are, it's just crazy. And the impact the books have made on people, it's incredible. It's just incredible. And I guess Dad, Eoin, I guess he's a good guy as well. Like, if you think he's a narcissist and he's full of himself, if you get that vibe, it's kind of true, but you get over it after you know him for 18 years, you know. I will say, though, every day when I walk into school, there is a picture of him in my English class, and he stares into my soul, and it's like, there's like a quote from it, and it's the most terrifying thing ever. But I guess I'll have to live with it, because he's a great guy. Happy 20th anniversary.
Oh, that's so nice. How did you get all these? Apparently I'm staring into his soul now in school. That must be terrible. I can only imagine picture your dad in your English class looking down at you. But that was, I got off pretty lightly. I got off pretty lightly there, but you can see how Sean has a very dry sense of humor. So,
and now, why don't we, to juxtapose, let's go to Finn.
Hi everybody, I'm Finn. I'm one of Owen's sons, and Seamus asked us the question, what has it been like growing up in a world with Artemis Fowl? And to be honest, I can't really think of a world without Artemis Fowl. From such a young age, my brother and I have been surrounded by the books and the stories, and by my dad working. It's just always been such a huge part of our lives. From what Artemis Fowl has done for our family, or from what even my dad has done for our family by creating the book, creating this amazing story, this amazing character, which I'm super, super proud of. And I don't know, I aspire to have the same love for my work when I start working. But yeah, I think it's given our family a lot of freedom. From a young age, we've been able to travel around, experience new things, experience new cultures. Me personally, it's given me the opportunity to come to London and study something that I love to do. And yeah, I'm super grateful for that because not a lot of people have that opportunity. But Artemis Fowl and my father have provided that opportunity, which I'm really, really grateful for. But yeah, don't tell him I said any of this, please. It's between us. If he ever finds this out, his head might get a little bit bigger, and his head's already big enough. So yeah, don't want any of that happening. But see ya. Congratulations.
Oh,
The
dear.
slagging, it just never ends. It never ends. And I don't deserve it, Matt, because I never tease them. I'm just a lovely person. So, but that's, you guys have been really, yourself and Seamus have been so busy. So thanks for all the work you put in. It's really nice. Surprising. I feel like I feel like it's kind of at the end of my career. One of those shows.
We're about to put you on like a Viking ship, set it alight, and push it into a river.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
very
dear.
nice though.
And believe it or not, we've timed it perfectly because we wanted to leave a solid sort of 20 minutes at the end to really ask the fans some questions. But one more from me is, what does the future hold for Mr. Colfer now? What's next?
Well, I've just started working on a new standalone novel, which I'm very excited about. All I can say about that, it's a ghost story. So it is quite scary, and that's going to be tough for me because I'm one of these nervous people who doesn't like too long to go by without a laugh. So I'm going to have to hang on to that impulse and act. It will be funny, but only in places, but it will be. I have some quite scary characters, so that should be out, I suppose, in 2023. If I'm also doing a new book, two new picture books, which I can't talk about, they haven't been announced yet. And I'm doing, myself and Andrew and Gio are finishing up on Global, and that will be out next year too. And I have a couple of really big announcements coming. So it's 22, 23 are going to be very exciting years, and for picture books, graphic novels, and something in the theater. So it's all going to be. It's the roller coaster keeps on rolling for another couple of years.
Sure. So, shall we move swiftly on to answering some questions from fans around the world?
Yes, please. I'd love that.
I've got a few pre-prepared ones that we've collected from sort of Instagram and Twitter, and then we'll, I think, take some from the YouTube comments. So, first question I've got is from Jess, and she asks, what inspired Artemis Fowl, and did you know while writing that it would be such a huge success? I mean, we covered a bit of this, obviously, but
yeah. I was the story of Artemis Fowl is kind of a little bit based on a very simple, almost nursery rhyme story where a naughty boy tries to capture a leprechaun, and that's been told in many different versions. So I wanted to bring that into the 21st century with technology and make it into a novel. And for inspiration of the character of Artemis himself, I picked my younger brother Donal, who's 5 years younger than me, and he was a very inventive boy and very also a little bit naughty, I suppose, but weren't we all? But I saw a photograph of Donal wearing his first communion suit, and it just struck me that he was like a little James Bond villain, and once I had that thought, I realized that is the perfect guy to kidnap the leprechaun. So I took it from there, and it's funny, but how you can trace a whole series of books back to one image, which I still have, and I often use it in my presentations. And I just saw that, and it was literally like the lightning bolt. So it all flowed from there, from just seeing that one photograph on that one day. I probably would have gotten to it another way, but I'm sure the books would not be the same if I hadn't seen that photograph.
Sure. A question from Stace. What can you tell us about Butler's parents or any other family? What's with the big age gap and Juliet being born in the United States?
Well, that is a very interesting question, Stace, and thanks for logging in yet again. I had to do the maths on that one, so I think Butler's mother had Butler when she was like 19, and then she had Juliet when she was 40. And it's actually quite a sad story because Butler's mother was in prison when she had Juliet, and she had her I'm trying to remember the name of the prison that is in Mississippi, I think, because I mentioned it in the High Fire book. So Juliet is a jail baby, so she was born in prison, and then it's very sadly the Butler matriarch died in prison, and then Butler, who had been searching for years, he took Juliet out of the system and brought her back to Ireland. And if that sounds incredible, it is because I'm literally making that up as I speak. So, but it sounds, because Stace, if you're watching, Stace, please, I'm old. Stop trying to catch me out, because you will. I don't really. I know I should, but I don't build up much backstory. I kind of use what I need, and I literally, it's like closing a drawer. Once I'm finished the book, that drawer is closed. I forget all that stuff, and I move on to the next book. So I'm always being asked questions that I've never considered an answer. But when I do think about it, I come up with something like the prison baby, Angola. That's the name of the prison. So Butler, Juliet was born in Angola prison because his mother was arrested for she was a forger, and that's what happened. I'm sure that
you had me going. You had even me going, Owen. You had me for like.
No,
hook,
but that's
line,
it now,
and
man.
sinker.
We have established that's now canon.
New canon. Yeah.
We have canonized it. So yes, that you heard it here first and probably last.
Okay, I think one just popped up on the screen, but I've already forgotten it. There it is. So from, I believe, Julia, what is your favorite character of the saga?
Hi, Julia. I think my favorite. I have a few, but really, I think Holly is my favorite character because she's just. I think every saga for young people does need a shining example, and Holly is ours, and she actually is the one who changes Artemis so that he becomes a decent human being, and so she carries the weight of the series on her shoulders. And she's not a perfect person. She, none of us are. She's quite impulsive. She's not great at obeying the rules of the LEP, but she's just such a bright, shining light of goodness and heart that you can't help but like her. And actually, she has more screen time, if you want to call it that, in the first book than Artemis. She's actually got more pages there. So she was initially, I suppose, more the main character than Artemis was, but Artemis just grew and grew. But I still think Holly is my favorite, and she's based on a very specific girl who had taught, I think, a couple of years earlier, who was just such a strong, determined character that she makes a real impression. And Holly is like that. I would hope that she makes an impression on anyone who reads about her.
Amazing. So we've got a question from Jess. What inspired Opal?
Hi, Jess. I think Jess. I know Jess from Instagram. Opal is the one character maybe who is just made up. I don't think I know any Opals. So I really wanted someone evil. I mean, Artemis, you can be inspired by someone for Artemis because even though he's a bit of a nasty person sometimes, at heart he's good. But Opal has no heart really. She's just nasty through and through. So there's a few characters in there. Yeah, there's a few characters in there. John Spiro was another one. He was just evil. In the High Fire books, we had Regent's Hook. So those people, if you're lucky, you don't meet them. So no, I didn't. I never met an Opal, and I hope I never do. Really, it's not the kind of person you want to meet.
So from Laura, which is the easiest character to write, and which is the hardest, and why?
I think the easiest character to write for me was always Foley because he's I didn't realize it for a while, but I probably based him on myself. You know, this smart aleck sitting around tapping on his computer and passing comments on everybody who walks past him. And that's kind of a little bit on me. So I would be just imagining what I would say. And the hardest ones are the ones that you just completely make up yourself, that are not based on someone. And they're usually the baddies. If it's somebody who does not have any redeeming qualities, most baddies would have a redeeming quality. So you would, for example, Turnbull Root, who was in the Atlantis complex, he was the bad guy, but he did everything for love. So a lot of people can identify with that. But Opal, she was quite difficult to maintain that level of villainy, because that, if you're going to maintain that, if someone has not got any redeeming features, they have to be very interesting. It's like Hannibal Lecter, you know, you can't really, he's fascinating, but he has to be interesting because he's so bad, and he's interesting because he loves music, and he's very cultured, and he's very well spoken. And Opal is the same. She's fascinating because she's so viciously witty. She's very funny, but very nasty. So that's hard to maintain, because everything she says has to feed into that personality. So yeah, I would say Foley was the easiest and Opal was the hardest.
You have any scenes you later removed in the books, like deleted scenes in a sense? I'd be interested to know if any iconic scenes may have turned out differently from RH. How very mysterious.
Well, RH is probably the songwriter Richard Hawley. I would imagine that's who it is. No, there's always scenes that get deleted, and most of them are deleted are because they're waffle, really. But one I remember I had in was in the second book, the dwarf Mulch Diggins has gone missing, and they found him in LA, and initially it ended up that he was stealing Oscars, and that was what he was doing. But initially he was kind of holding massive parties with the money that he stole. So he was kind of basically hanging out like a playboy, covered in sunblock, and he was just having all these superstars over to his house for parties. And he was going to be a director of a movie. And I think I had listed loads of actors. I think Tom Cruise was going to be there, and there was all these. And the Disney said, you cannot have all these actual people attending this nuts party for your dwarf. So that had to go, and that was replaced with the better known scenes of Mulch stealing Oscars, and actually Gio Vanni did a brilliant rendition of that in the graphic novel of the Arctic Incident, where he portrayed Mulch breaking into a high-rise apartment and stealing a Best Actress Oscar. So it turned out to be a much better scene. But I still remember me giggling away to myself at the thoughts of Mulch Diggins giving a lecture to Tom Cruise about acting. So, but
who would be taller? Who would Mulch be taller?
That would pretend. I think that would pretend. That would depend a lot on the footwear. It would depend what kind of shoe. I think I can't joke because I think Tom Cruise is taller than me, so I'm in no position to make fun of it.
From Lawrence, was killing off Commander Root hard? Well, it hurt me deeply, but I'll let you answer, obviously.
I think that was when I killed off Commander Root. It was the first time I realized the effect these books were having on people, because people were genuinely, not kidding, sad. They were genuinely upset, and I would meet people who were crying, and I just couldn't. And I never realized it really taught me a lesson. I still stand by the decision to do it, because just for dramatic purposes, it had to be done. But I remember feeling really guilty. I would go to these readings, and previous to that, I would come out and people would be, very happy, clapping, yay. And when I wrote the Opal Deception, it was like there was a large
excuse
section of the crowd, like they were coming, but they weren't happy to see me, and they wanted me to explain my. And they were right to do that, and I know because I felt the same when I was reading books and characters were killed. And if I felt they were killed in a way that was just kind of a gimmick, I would feel really cheated, and especially if it was a character that I loved. I mean, I really didn't like it when they killed Robin, and it was like a public vote. I said, that's not storytelling. You know, if you take a vote, I didn't like that at all because it was such a ploy. So I really was at pains to point out to people, no, this is a necessary element of the story and of the drama. So hopefully people will give me.
Question from Vix: Did you create the Gnomish alphabet yourself?
Hi Vix. I created the idea of it, but the Gnomish alphabet was in the manuscript, so it was mentioned, but we didn't have the symbols. And then my first editor, the wonderful Sarah Hughes, she had the idea. You know, we should put a code in, we should put an alphabet in, and we can run it along the bottom of the book and have a little separate story. And as some of the viewers might remember the old comics, Fireball and Warlord, that you could get in the 70s in the UK and Ireland, and you could join in the Fireball Club and decode the message every week in the comic. And I did that, and I loved that, and a lot of my friends loved it. So when Sarah had this idea, this brilliant idea, I jumped all over it. I thought, that's great. And so she found an artist then who designed the code. And initially we were going to do a different code. Yeah, there it is. Initially we did a different code for the first 3 books, but people kind of just loved the first code so much. They really, really wanted that first code back. So instead of doing a different code for the 8 books, we went back to the original code. And I don't know if they even use those other 2 codes anymore. So if you have a book with a different code in Atlantis and Opal, then they're quite rare, I think.
Owen, do you have plans for more future Fowlverse content, or are you ready to let the series rest to work on other projects?
Well, thank you for that question, Lafayette. I'm not quite ready to let it rest yet, but I want to take it into another medium. And so I've always worked on other projects, and I'll continue to do that. And I've already got 4 different projects, as I was saying, or maybe 5, kind of under my belt that are ready to go. But there's something I want to do with Artemis, and hopefully I'll be able to talk a bit more about that next year. We'll see. I really don't. There was a point in my life where I thought, well, eventually I will finish up with Artemis Fowl and the Fowl family completely. But now there's so much part of me and so much part of my legacy, and if I have one, and in another 20 years, my goal is, can I get my kids to still say nice things about me? So that's my. It's nice. It was lovely to hear from them, actually, because Irish parents and their kids, we're not very lovey-dovey, and so it's really nice to hear the boys. So
and they weren't nice. And it was like they were sort of complimenting you whilst backhanding you at the same time. It's very remarkable to see.
It's a talent. It is a real talent. So I think if I have taught them that and nothing else, I've done my job as a dad, as an Irish dad.
You've helped them in the world. So I do believe we have hit 6 o'clock. Somehow it's been an hour, Owen. I don't quite know how that's happened, but I think it's probably about time we wrapped it up.
Okay, well, if I could just, my final word would be a heartfelt thank you to you, of course, who's been by my side physically and virtually for 20 years nearly, and Seamus, who's like the the sun. I wonder, can Seamus pop himself up there for a minute and show the world his
Seamus,
face?
can you make yourself?
There he is. There he is. Who's been
Look
doing
at us
a lot
with all
of
our t-shirts.
Yeah. So also you got these. You also made those, but and Sophie, who was on earlier, my various editors, all the people, Andrew and Gio, who are, I suppose, my closest collaborators, all the people who've brought us around. Last year, me and Andrew and Gio went on a couple of tours, and we had absolutely wonderful people bring this around. We had Steph, we had Emily, who brought us around the United States, and we had Marta, we had a lot of people. We had Cynthia as well, who was fantastic in Mexico. So all these people who brought us around and looked after us all over the world, and continue to do so. And the people who've looked after me down through the years, I've had Nelly, I've had Jen, I've had, of course, Adele, who was, Adele as well, and all the people who've looked after us in HarperCollins for the last few years. There's just so many. It's been so many people. You know who you are, so if I missed you, I'm really sorry. And of course, and most importantly, the readers, who have stuck by me for generations now, and hopefully for a few years to come. So a real sincere thank you for giving my sons the lifestyle they deserve.
And they're obviously using it very well, aren't they?
I hope so. I'm eking it out. So they don't get too spoiled.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Eoin, and thank you so much to everyone for joining. And what a 20 years it's been.
What a 20 years. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Eoin. Take care. Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.